Okay, so just another example of male privilege because supposedly MRAs think that Fematheist is some raving lunatic and that, the matriarchy controls the first world and blah blah blah. So anyway, you all know about that story in China where that guy divorced and sued his ex-wife because she had plastic surgery and didn't tell him. They had a kid, and the kid ended up looking like her prior to the plastic surgery, obviously. And because in his mind the kid was ugly, now he wants to sue her for basically fraud for not telling him that she had plastic surgery. And, plastic surgery is fucking expensive no matter where you live. So, clearly, and in China, women are second class citizens. A lot of times, they will purposely have abortions to make sure that, they have men over women. Because of the one child policy, combined with the patriarchy, they would rather have men than women. So, that in turn means there's more men than women in society, and you would think, given economics, that supply and demand would take effect, and since that there's fewer women, more men would desire them. But you would be wrong because culturally, men despise women in China. So therefore, the rarity of the woman does not come into effect, or at least not enough. So therefore, that just proves right there that economics is bullshit. You can't rely on supply and demand. You can't rely on the free market. The human mind is the market. That's what affects whether or not something does well or fails. That's what affects how people live and cooperate. And therefore, we should not have to compete for wages or land. But that's another discussion for another day. The point here is the fact that this woman goes and pays for her own plastic surgery. So, what exactly? What was her motivation? I don't know. But personally, if I were to invest in plastic surgery, I would not get married to begin with. Number one, if I'm going to go through the trouble of paying a couple $100,000 to look that damn good, you can imagine I'm gonna be a fucking whore. I'm gonna sleep with whoever I want, whenever I want, how many times I want. I'm gonna sleep with all sorts of fucking people and, use my good looks to mooch off them and shit like that, and I'd be proud of it because I went out of my way to fucking spend whatever hundred amounts of grand in order to look this good so that, perverts and lechers would indeed do that and give me nice things for sleeping with them. I don't blame women for being gold diggers and prostitutes and things like that. I believe that's a problem with society. I believe that's a problem with our culture that sex is perverted in such a regard. That we see it as a commodity to be bought and sold instead of a means to an end of the reproduction of our species and the survival of our entire race, of our entirety existence. So, that's the problem with people. Fact is, if there wasn't this struggle for capital, there'd be no need to do it. There'd be no need to whore around. There'd be no need to be a gold digger. There would be no need for people to manipulate one another. So the problem goes deeper than simply the personal choices of certain undesirable people. In other words, someone makes a bad choice, but that is not necessarily their doing. I mean, yes, on some level it is. They choose to make that bad decision. But in this case example, he wants to sue her, and all the MRAs are snickering and sneering to themselves about it because they just like to see women get hurt. But deep down, they're agreeing with the man because they said, oh, well, it's fraud. Well, what motivated her to commit the fraud? The fact is, as she looked prior to the plastic surgery, most likely she was picked on and tormented by men because she was not the most gorgeous woman to begin with. So that in and of itself is motivation enough. That in and of itself can only be expected to react in the way she did. In other words, if you're going to treat someone like shit, do not be surprised when they lie, they cheat, they steal, and murder you. Because that's what a normal person does. That's what's supposed to happen. That's how nature works. So, that right there. And and also the fact that society already looks down on women. So not only personally does she react this way, but metaphysically, on the larger scale, she realizes that as a woman, in order to compete on the Chinese marketplace of women trying to find a nice man to get married to and have kids with and have a normal life, she's going to have to up her game. And the only way she could have thought to do that was to get plastic surgery. Now, is this the way she should have gone? Probably not, but who cares? Who cares about what strategy she used? Who cares about whether or not her ideals were pure? The point is, she has to live in a fucking country that says as a woman, she has to work twice as hard for half as much. The fact is, because she's a woman, she is automatically inferior, and everything she does will never be good enough. MRAs are the ones bitching that men are like that in America, and to a lesser extent Canada and England and shit like that. So how are you going to turn around and condone what this man is doing to a Chinese woman when the Chinese model is completely different? Chinese culture is not American culture. So if you know that there is a heavy patriarchy in China, why are you going to cling to this bitterness of your own problems in the United States or in Canada or wherever and, act like that somehow this woman got what she deserved? What did she do to deserve this? How could she have done anything to deserve this? Because whatever she did was simply the end result of what happened to her around her life, the environment she was raised in. If she wasn't raised in that environment, she wouldn't have had to do the things that she did. And I understand that sounds like some touchy-feely liberal shit, that there's no personal accountability, and that, people don't make the free will decision to be evil. But the fact is, what could she have done differently? What would you have expected her to do? Would you have expected her to go her life being abused and treated like shit and just accept the fact that she's an ugly woman and always be at the bottom of the barrel and be treated even worse than her own fellow woman who is already treated badly in Chinese culture, but then just all the more so because she's not exactly desirable in the appearance department? Doesn't mean she's not a nice person, doesn't mean she can't work, doesn't mean she isn't smart, doesn't mean anything. It just simply means that because they already think so little of women, that because she has this flaw of not being sexually attractive, then all of a sudden now that gives everybody the right to treat her even worse. That's the world she lives in. That's her environment. So I figure anything she does is justified. Because if your environment is wrong, then you are right. It's just that simple. There's nothing you can do that can equal to that. I don't care if they say two wrongs don't make a right. I don't fucking care. If you live in a state of wrong, it doesn't fucking matter. You can't pollute an already putrid system. You can't muddy up fucking sludge and toxic sewage. It doesn't happen. If I go in the sewers and, pee in it, it doesn't somehow make it more filthy than it already was. I can piss and shit in the sewer all day long because it's already nothing but piss and shit. So, is that exactly the most constructive way to go about it? No, but it wouldn't hurt either. Not like it's going to make any moral difference. It's not like it's going to make any physical difference. So if somebody wants to pee and shit in the ocean of pee and shit, then by all means, go right ahead. That's the way I look at it. So, I'm running a little bit out of time here. I have maybe a minute left, but, I hope I've made some kind of point here. I hope I've gotten you to at least think about a little how you can't be so hard on yourself. You can't judge every little thing you do, because look at the environment we have to fucking live in. If you want to talk about conscious effort to be evil, instead of worrying about what the Chinese woman is doing, or what I'm doing, or what Femintheist is doing, why don't you worry about the people who do have leverage, and what they do with that leverage? The only people capable of being evil are the people that don't get punished for it. If they have some kind of authority, or some kind of fame, or money, or anything that prevents them from being held accountable for it, then yes, they're the evil ones, because they have the means to act differently. They have that choice, and they choose not to use it anyway. In other words, moderators have the choice to be good, because since they can control the speech, since they can control the environment of the forum, then they're the ones held responsible. Because they could just as simply say, no, I'm not going to tell people what to do. I'm not going to control what people say. I'm not going to humiliate and degrade other people, because that is wrong. And because I have that option within my physical ability, it is my duty not to. Because other people don't have that option. Because they're just the fucking members. They can't stop or do anything. All they can do is talk, talk, talk. So, since I can do more than talk, it is my moral obligation, it is my imperative to do more than just talk. Because if I don't, then I deserve to fucking die. That's what a moderator should say to themselves if they're a decent human being. But they're not a decent human being. So they should die. Because they're something less than an animal. Because, like an animal, animals have no control over their environment. Animals have no control over anything. They rely purely on instinct because, they don't know any better. And that's why we don't hold ill will towards animals even when they attack us and shit. Because they're not capable. They're powerless in their environment. And we're powerless in our environment. And the few people that do have power within the environment aren't making good use of it. That's what I'm talking about here. That's why I deplore moderators so much. So hopefully that gives you a better idea.